I always do that.
Let's run it then.
I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher.
What is going on, you beautiful bookworms, and welcome back to another episode of Bookmarks with Bump, the health, fitness, social commentary podcast where I go through exactly what the title displays, my bookmarks on Twitter, which range from a various number of topics, anywhere from politics to politicking. And here we are. Time is ticking. That's funny. Time is ticking. When this episode drops, it is daylight savings time. So quite literally, time is ticking. From the moment you wake up and hear this to the moment the sun goes down this afternoon, the time that we have to spend outside is dwindling away. Daylight savings time, not my favorite time of the year. I don't like losing anything, period. Quite competitive. But the thing I probably like losing the least is an hour of sleep. And with everything going on lately, that seems to be what I'm losing the most of is sleep. Working very hard here, a blue-collar boy, a tradesman, and I've been chipping away at overtime in my apprenticeship, and I have no complaints there. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor. I think that's a better way to say extra money than extra money, but that is what the fruits of my labor is, extra money. And hopefully after this season here, the overtime will be untaxed. That's right. We're going to get right into politics right away because this is election week. When you hear this on Sunday, 2 days from now, Monday, Tuesday, will be the day that we are called to action to focus and act upon our civic duty, which is to vote in our 4-year and our yearly elections. Now, what's important is that when you go to the ballot, you don't just write in for the president, who you want to be president this year. I think it's important that we write in for our local representatives. And as the campaign trail is coming to a close, I hope that you've taken time to answer the door for the people going door to door. I've answered the door for plenty of people in the last couple weeks here who have come by and wanted to explain themselves, for a lack of better terms. Yes, explain themselves and tell me why. Why should I vote for you to be my city alderman, to be my selectman, to be my state representative? What is it about you that makes you special enough to speak for all us special people? That's the question I don't think we ask enough. You know, we just see colors and affiliate ourselves to our gangs, but this is a lot more than tribalism. This is a lot more than my side versus your side. Earlier this year, a wise man came out and said that this is good versus evil, and I believe that to be the case now more than ever. This is good versus evil, and what I mean by that is we are at a turning point here as a society, and that's the first thing that I have marked down here in my bookmarks. I fear for the future, and this has a lot of great reasons as to why I fear for the future of our nation. I don't know what direction we're truly heading in. Nothing really seems cohesive. We don't operate as a team, and that's a big issue. It seems like it's every man for themselves more often than not. Especially in the Northeast region where I'm from, the New England area, Connecticut does adopt a sort of New York lifestyle where there's not a lot of friendly banter going back and forth. There's not a lot of it takes a village mentality. There's more of a one for me, and whatever y'all get. And that's not really the way that we're designed to operate. We are humans. We need a team. We need support. We need encouragement. We need people to have our backs and push us in the right direction. We can't always just focus on ourselves. We can do a lot to focus on ourselves, and especially, that might sound strange coming from a guy like me who is very focused on himself, his goals, and a lot of my goals are oriented towards individual sports, running in particular, but weightlifting, staying in good shape. These are things that we have to hold ourselves accountable to. There's a difference between doing things on your own and solitude. Now, when I'm out running, that is a moment of solitary, moving meditation for me. But it's also a way for me to become the man that I am, a dedicated man who's focused and driven and who doesn't give up on his goals or his tasks. That's that is who I become on my runs. That is who I become in the weight room. In the weight room, though, there is a lot more camaraderie. Okay, there are people that I'm spotting. There are people that I'm encouraging. There are people that I'm giving tips to this day. I still put on my personal training hat and I give advice where advice is needed. Give advice where advice is needed more often than not. I was a man who would just give advice willingly, but I've learned over the course of the last couple months here to just kind of be an ear rather than a mouth. And I think that's important. That's an important thing. When you are called upon, do everything that you can within your power to do what you're called upon for, but don't force yourself on anything. Unless if you're forcing yourself on yourself, and sometimes that's what we have to do out there. Before I dive into the threads here, I know I just got sidetracked, but I'm thinking right now, when you hear this, it's 1 week from race day. So not only are we on election week, we are on race week, and this is the time where I really lock in. I am thinking with tunnel vision. I'm entering the last week. After tomorrow's long run, I'll be entering the last week of race training, and I'm going to go out. I'm going to see some sights on Sunday. I'm going to wake myself up with the sunrise, and it's going to be hurtful because that's going to be an hour earlier than usual, but I think that's just going to get me right into the rhythm that I need to be in. The next week, what's it look like for me? A lot of the same running exercises, 3 days a week in the weight room, much lower weights, a little bit of a deload, and then I will reload and hop into heavier weights and more volume the week after that. I'm running in back-to-back races. I have a 10K and a 5K, and that'll cap off this year's season. I will be gauging pace from there and moving forward, focusing on what I need to. If I need to focus on more endurance throughout the winter, I will focus on more endurance. If I need to focus on more speed throughout the winter, I will focus on more speed. But right now, what I need to focus on is November 10th, and that is going to be the day that I prove to myself where I'm at. And I'm very excited to do so. I'm excited to get out into a different region and do a run. It'll be fun to run around UConn's campus. Last weekend, my dad and I went out to a UConn football game. Kind of scouted the area, but not really. The run is in Stores, and we were in East Hartford at Rentschler Field, where the UConn Huskies got a nice, tough, gritty win. It wasn't until the third quarter where they scored a touchdown. They were down 3-0 at the half. They played the Houston Rice Owls. They came up from Houston after last year coming up and getting trounced upon. I think we put up 50 plus on Rice last year. Well, this year was not the same. It took us 3.5 quarters to finally break free on a run and get a 43-yard touchdown from Cam Robinson into the end zone, which was what an exciting play. As soon as he broke through the secondary, everybody knew he was scoring. Nobody was catching up to him, and the whole stadium just got loud. A stadium that holds 15,000, probably holding 5,000 a game, which is unfortunate to see, but how many of those students are going to drive 30 minutes, get hammered in the parking lot, go in, and then drive 30 minutes home? I think it's best that they just don't do that. But I would love to see those games packed out more. I would love to see UConn's football program continue to expand and become better. Last year, we took a little bit of a dip after visiting a bowl game in the season prior. But this year, we are almost undefeated at home. They'll play tonight. Tonight is Friday. They have their senior night tonight. They're playing Georgia State. That should pan out to be an exciting game, but last week was exciting nonetheless. Scored in the third quarter, continued to hold down Rice defensively. Our defense played really well, or the quarterbacks for both teams just couldn't make anything happen. Both were under 50% completion rate. Whenever they dropped back to pass, both teams got a loud groan because it was just a nothing burger of a quarterback showcase. It was more of a run the ball down your throat and punt it away type of game. Not the most exciting thing, but my dad and I have been going for the last couple of years, and we've lost every single game that we went to. So we proved to ourselves and the Yukon Huskies faithful that we are not the bad luck charm. And they pulled out a 17-10 win. After they scored their second touchdown in the fourth quarter there with about 3 minutes left, we kicked the ball off the rice, and they happened to run back for 100 yards that kick. And that was the only touchdown they scored in the game. And maybe that was strategic. Maybe that was a way for us to get the ball back and run out the clock. Rice had no timeouts left, and that was the end of that game. Now, the next time I will be in a Yukon facility or Yukon area, I will be the performer. I will be the athlete. And I'm, like I said, I'm just very excited and looking forward to proving to myself what I can do at a longer distance. The longest race I ran this year was the 5-mile Torrington Road Race that we talked about ad nauseum to this point, where I gassed out early. I came out, I shot out of the gate way too fast. I ran my first mile in 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and then from there it was all downhill. And I know that's not a pace that right now is attainable for me to keep at a long stretch. This race coming up, I'd like to run 7-minute miles or 7:15 miles for this 6-mile race and hopefully maintain that pace throughout the entire track. That would be me hitting my goal. I believe that would put me in at under 45 minutes. That is my ultimate goal for this 10K, is to come in under 45 minutes and basically have a better race than my 5-mile race earlier in the year. Give myself something to pace with, something to play with, and just take on a marathon schedule right away, and hopefully run a marathon either late spring next year or early summer. We'll see where I'm at, and I will report to you after it's all said and done. You'll hear from me before I run the race. I'll put out another podcast on race day that'll be recorded probably Thursday or Friday next week, and I'll probably be very antsy. I'll probably be very quiet. I probably won't be as funny, and it'll be all business. However, this week, right now, the closest thing that we have to focus on is the election. And this is what we're fighting for. The West as we know it is falling, okay? And the West is what we look at here, is America. The Americas. You could look at Canada if you want to include that. You could look at Mexico if you want to include that. But right now what I'm focused on is the United States of America, which has a major presidential election coming up in the coming days. And what have we done? Well, G.K. Chesterton has a quote, and it goes like, "When a society loses its moral compass, it collapses from within." A thread uncovering the falling of the West. And I think this is important to highlight because one of the things that you see on X or Twitter these days is a lot of clips from rallies. And at Kamala rallies, you have seen people come out and say Jesus is king or praise Jesus, Jesus is Lord. And she kind of told these people yelling these things out that they're at the wrong rally. I don't know what that's all about, but I know that when I was standing in the classroom every morning, we'd say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we are one nation, undivided, under God. Or we were at that time. It was a long time ago when I was in elementary school, but nonetheless, we were one nation, undivided, under God. And right now, what I feel is more division than ever. And maybe if we dive into this thread, we can figure out why. And number one goes on to say the celebration of obesity, and I think that's what caught my eye. I used to be a tub of lard myself, and I've worked very hard through keeping myself accountable and changing my goals, and you know, I think a shift of morals also took place throughout all of this, and it's important to take care of yourself. This is where we should be selfish as people. I spoke earlier in this podcast about how we need each other to push each other through life. But I think one thing that we need to do And one instance where we need to be selfish is in an instance like this, your health. The thread goes on to say the body positivity deception. The rise of body positivity has twisted the concept of self-acceptance into glorifying unhealthy lifestyles. Obesity, once recognized as a serious health risk, is now celebrated as an alternative version of health, all under the guise of promoting self-love. The dangerous narrative not only normalizes life-threatening conditions but discourages individuals from taking responsibility for their health, ultimately benefiting industries that profit from illness, such as Big Pharma and the processed food sector. Now, I can't agree with this more, and I can't tell you how much more my life has gotten better since taking care of my health, my quality of life. The first thing that made me want to even start being healthy, it wasn't to run in races. No, it was just that I was waking up every day achy. My knees hurt, my back hurt, and I thought, is this going to be what the rest of my life is like? I was in a place where I had no control over my life, but what I did have control of was my health, and I just grabbed the reins and never looked back. Number 2 on this list is feminism, the destruction of gender roles. Now, before you turn it off, let me get into it. What started as a movement for equal rights, which I agree with, has now become a divisive force, tearing apart families and relationships. Feminism has pushed the narrative that traditional gender roles are oppressive, undermining the value of motherhood and homemaking, and demonizing masculinity. This cultural shift has led to broken homes, emasculated men and women chasing careers at the expense of family, causing a societal imbalance that's left children without role models and genuine connections. Now, that's the part that I agree with. Leaving children without role models and genuine connections. There should be a leader in every household. This is true. And there should be a nurturer in every household. People will say that the patriarchy is dead. The patriarchy is oppressive. I'm sorry if you feel that way, but the patriarchy is important. It truly is. I think we all have a place. We all have, I've said this a million times, we're all a piece of the puzzle. We all need to fit together in certain roles to make sure that this world works the way it should. And the way it should is a child at home being taken care of, instead of a child at home being watched by somebody who can't even watch themselves. This is a very integral part of a young child's life is time around their mother, learning that nurture and getting wisdom from their mother. A person who's watched somebody provide and take care of the things that are kind of kept behind closed doors, the bills, the finances, the person going to work, being the breadwinner. I believe that feminism started as a good thing, as many movements do. They all start as good things. However, we've tricked ourselves into believing that we are way too important individually. We all play important roles, but nothing is as important as a cohesive and well-worked team. Number 3 is the death of masculinity. Men have been conditioned to suppress their natural instincts, becoming passive and compliant, rather than strong and assertive. Masculinity is now labeled as toxic, discouraging men from embracing their roles as leaders, protectors, and providers. This war on masculinity has created a generation of lost boys and absent fathers, leading to a lack of direction and purpose in many men's lives, weakening the foundation of Western society. Yes. Now, we've taken some of these words, right? So feminism has kind of adopted a new nuance, if you will, and so has masculinity. Now, masculinity is described as toxic. To me, there's nothing toxic about being a leader. To me, there's nothing toxic about being somebody who's willing to put their foot down to protect and provide for the people around them. That's what masculinity is. Masculinity isn't being a douchebag. Masculinity isn't being a womanizer. These things aren't what masculinity is about. And I think that part of the movement that has made these things work the way they do is the distortion of what it actually is. People are conditioned in a way to think that being masculine is being a bad person. Being masculine is just, being masculine is really just being a leader, stepping up to the plate. And I don't see what's wrong with that. And I think that if we can shift the focus back to calling a spade, then we can get our masculinity back. A lot of us never really have lost it, you know? I don't feel like I have. I feel like as I've grown, I've become more masculine, where I was, more sentimental and focused on emotions and feelings when I was younger and lost. And now that I'm not lost anymore, and I guess I've been found, I think that where I'm at now proves that masculinity is a good thing. 4 is division by design, the identity trap. Identity politics have replaced unity and common goals with divisiveness and victimhood, encouraging people to view themselves as oppressed based on race, gender, or sexuality. This narrative creates endless divisions, making it impossible to adjust real societal problems. Instead of finding solutions, identity politics have led to constant infighting and polarization, ensuring that people remain distracted while the true power structures go unchallenged. Now imagine if we all banded together. People are people. I believe in that. I understand that in the past, people were oppressed. But now I believe a lot, and especially through putting myself through this type of oppression, I believe that we are all capable of doing all things, especially with a strong faith of God. And that comes in the next couple threads here. But I think if you truly believe in yourself, all of those restrictions that we place on ourselves fall to the wayside. Now let's get into the porn pandemic. Number 5, the West is drowning in hypersexualization, with pornography and casual sex being normalized. This has led to distorted views of relationships, intimacy, and love, weakening the bonds that create strong, healthy families. In the West, porn addiction has stripped countless individuals of the ability to form authentic relationships, creating a generation that's emotionally numb, disconnected, and unable to experience true intimacy. This cycle perpetuates isolation, fueling society's descent into loneliness and despair. That's all self-explanatory. We've seen it in music videos, movies, TV shows. We are way too obsessed with sex as a culture. I think if you're in love with somebody, then yes, sex is cool, you know? But we shouldn't use people as objects. Number 6, the war on faith, replacing morality with materialism. Organized religion in the West has been demonized, with secularism and atheism elevated as the only enlightened worldviews. This attack on faith has left society without a moral compass, allowing materialism and hedonism to take root as guiding principles. As traditional values crumble, people turn to empty pursuits for fulfillment, leaving them spiritually adrift and easier to manipulate. This erosion of faith has paved the way for an increasingly soulless and controlled society, where the pursuit of power and pleasure eclipses deeper meaning and purpose. We are not the ones who control our fate. Now, granted, we make decisions every single day. This is true. But with faith in God, your fate is secured. And what I mean by that is through faith, through belief in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you are granted eternal salvation. So the despair, the feeling of hopelessness or lost feelings that you may feel will slowly start to drift away as more and more things come to you. The more grateful you are for life, the more grateful you are for what God gives you, the more God decides to give you. It's not the more you ask why, it's the more you thank God. Number 7 is the suburban trap, isolation and dependency. In the West, the post-war suburban boom promised an ideal lifestyle, but led to widespread isolation and dependency. Instead of fostering community, suburban sprawl disconnected families, forcing car-dependent, solitary lives. Rather than promoting social cohesion, this model has left Westerners isolated, reliant on consumer goods and tied to long commutes, eroding the sense of community. And this is what I talked about earlier. We are so individualized. We don't have these villages that it took to raise good people, to raise good men and good women. Those have kind of drifted away as time has gone on, and that's not where we need to be in the world. Where we could be is a much better place, and that's together. 8 is education, the woke indoctrination. The woke indoctrination factory. In the West, education has shifted from teaching critical thinking to pushing ideological agendas. Schools and universities now act as indoctrination centers, filling young minds with woke narratives rather than fostering independent thought. This includes pushing children into questioning their gender identity and promoting other radical ideologies, ensuring future generations are easier to manipulate and control. This deliberate shift ensures the masses never challenge the systems of power that keep them subjugated. Interesting, isn't it? We used to be taught to think, and now we're taught what to think. That's it. That's the crap in all of it. Number 9, OnlyFans, the digital brothel in disguise. In the West, OnlyFans is hailed as female empowerment. But it's a reflection of deeper societal decay. Women are monetizing their bodies under the illusion of independence, falling into a trap of exploitation marketed as freedom. This trend reinforces the West's hypersexualization, reducing women's worth to appearances over intellect or skills. It's a digital age exploitation that erodes self-respect and dignity in Western society. And what happened to privacy? And what happened to dignity? What happened to character? Everything digital, that's what happened. When we were back on pen and paper, you didn't have to worry about things like this. I can't imagine growing up and having something like this shoved in my face. It's not... Money is not the most important thing in the world, man. And that's... I can't say that enough. And the more you stop worrying about money, the more it seems to come. The more a career will come and smack you in the face. It's not about money, and that's kind of what we run into here. We run into an issue where you'll do anything for money these days. You'll sell your soul, and that's exactly what happens here. Number 10, declining birth rates and destruction of the nuclear family. And this one drives me nuts. Western societies are facing a demographic crisis as birth rates plummet. This trend is a direct result of societal pressures that discourage family formation, with career ambitions and personal freedom prioritized over parenthood. This falls in line with the feminism trap. It's all more individual. People run away from their families at a young age. People will openly say that they hate their family. Listen, I have a dysfunctional family, just as dysfunctional as anybody else, Malcolm in the Middle style, but what I don't have is hatred for them. I love them. I love them, and I love all their flaws. Because without all their flaws, without all of them, I wouldn't be who I am today. We all have a part in who the people around us become. I think it's important to remember that. The destruction of the nuclear family has left children without stable homes and role models, contributing to the rising rates of mental health issues, delinquency, and hopelessness. And that falls in line with it takes a village. It truly does. And you are a little piece of everybody that's around you. And if you surround yourself constantly with people that glorify your opinions, you are surrounding yourself with an echo chamber. You need people to disagree with in life. As much as being around people who are right in line with you helps make you feel comfortable, growth only comes in uncomfortable situations. And I think growing up and staying and sticking around your family, sticking by your family's side despite how much they drive you nuts, is a huge contributing factor to having good character, having good discernment, having good debate skills. We don't want to debate here anymore. We just want to agree and move to those who agree with us. But there's so much more to life when you kind of open everything up and say, okay, let's have at it. And I guess that's why right now I'll reveal who I'm voting for. I mean, what's the big deal? I'm sure a lot of you could probably guess. And it's no surprise that I'll be voting for Donald J. Trump in this year's election. And the reason why I'm doing that is because He's not part of the establishment, or if he is, he doesn't make that obvious. I don't like to be lied to, and we are constantly gaslit and lied to by today's politicians, by today's establishment politicians. They spent the last 4 years attacking Donald Trump for undermining democracy because he had issues with how voting happened. And listen, if I was winning in huge swing states and all of a sudden after midnight, hundreds of thousands of votes came through to change the outcome of the election, I would be upset too. But what he didn't do throughout the primary is undermine our democracy. He won fair and square in the primary to become the Republican nominee. The Democratic candidate did not. And as a matter of fact, they once again pushed out another candidate who was popular, who challenged the establishment. Bernie Sanders dealt with this in 2016. Dealt with it again in 2020. Robert F. Kennedy dealt with it this year. He moved from a Democrat into the Independent Party, and we all know how it works out with the Independent Party. They don't have the sponsorship. They don't have the support that a Democratic or Republican nominee may have. So unfortunately, we are pushed to believe that democracy was undermined by a man who was upset with the results, when in reality, they undermined democracy and nominated somebody who not one single person voted for, and that's Kamala Harris. She did not earn that nomination. Therefore, I will not vote for her. And I think that's the right thing that we have to do as Americans, is not allow ourselves to be lied to anymore and challenge the establishment that is currently failing us. Because it's no coincidence that the agenda of the world, of the Western world, is everything that I just talked about. That is by design. These are things that are put in place by different cabinets, and education being a big one. They can do something about the schools. We have boards of education. We have a department of education. Why are we teaching what we're teaching in school? Because it's fed down through the funnel. Why is our economy the way our economy is? Because it's fed down through the funnel. Why are we taxed the way we're taxed? It's all fed down through the funnel. And I don't want another 4 years of these same people feeding this funnel. I want something new. I want something different. And I believe many of us do. I found a thread here that goes into a little bit of the business side of Donald Trump, and that's what I can endorse when it comes to Donald Trump, is his business acumen. And right now, I think what we need is a leader who looks at this country as a business. Yes, we are full of people. We are full of people who are full of feelings. But when the economy is good, we are good. When education is good, we are good. So let's get a businessman in there who can run this place, and let's see what we can do for ourselves, with our villages, with our people around us. Donald Trump turned a small loan of $1 million, that's in quotations because I've never received $1 million loan, into $3.7 billion. And while his father wanted his older son to take over the family business, instead he got Donald. And America got a president with a wild past. This is the hidden family drama behind Donald's rise to power. In 1975, Fred Trump gave Donald $1 million to start his business. Many people don't believe that's all he received, though there's an even more shocking story. One that shows the unseen side of Trump. It all started in a home where affection was hard to come by. Donald's mother was a missing piece in his life. Ill and bedridden, Donald was left with his father Fred for much of his early life. But he was a demanding man who only cared for success. And without his mom, Donald's life became a cold pursuit of power and admiration. There's that nuclear family unit coming into play, isn't it? Fred Trump was a real estate developer worth over $300 million. By 1942, he had built 2,000 homes in Brooklyn and was known as the Henry Ford of real estate. And in 1968, Donald had joined alongside his father, but Donald was never his first choice to inherit it. Fred may have supported Donald, but he always wanted his older son Freddie to take over the family business. But Freddie's gentle nature didn't fit the business world, so Donald became the aggressive heir Fred hoped for, desperate to live up to his father's expectations. With a $70 million loan guaranteed by his father, Donald entered the Manhattan real estate market with his first big deal, the Grand Hyatt Hotel. By 1996, Donald sold half of his share for $140 million, doubled that money. But his true talent wasn't business, it was media persuasion. Trump turned himself into a celebrity. Hungry for the approval of his father and others, he began building his public image. Look at The Apprentice, for example. The hit TV show made Donald one of the most famous businessmen of all of New York. He became a respectable household name to 28 million people, and the more you dig, the more you realize so much of the Donald most people know today was shaped by his father. Despite his public image, Donald's leadership is a reflection of his childhood neglect. Aggressive and demanding. He leads with the same attitude his father showed him. But I don't think Fred Trump would have ever imagined Donald would do what he did next. In 2015, he announced he was running for president. He had spent 2004 to 2015 climbing as a TV celebrity, and now his sights were setting being next in line for the Oval Office. But why? What was he trying to prove? As president, with all eyes on him, Donald was as close as he could get to filling his father's shoes. He made it onto the world stage, but his father was notoriously impossible to please. So I wonder if all this time he's been living for his father instead of himself. Whether you see him as such or not, Donald is one of the most famous heirs in the world. And a lot of times this is what happens to heirs with such a demanding father. They want to become their father and outdo his success, but it's the wrong way of going about it. Your job as an heir is never to surpass your father, because you're not growing up in the same conditions as he did. You don't need the money. So your purpose is not to take more money for your ego. It's to do something meaningful with the hand you were dealt. And I believe that despite his aggressive nature, despite his verbose ways, despite his brash and harsh style of leading, I believe that is what he is set out to do. I really do think that he has a part in making this country a better place. And I look at the 4 years where he was our president, and I do believe, and I look back on that time as a time where he was making this a better place. Now, listen, this was a time where I ended up getting in trouble. I ended up getting locked up. But I also found opportunity when I came home throughout this presidential reign of Donald Trump, if you would. I lost myself and found myself in those 4 years that he was in office. And, man, I mean, the country was an enabling factor in me being able to do that. I found a place to make good money. I found a passion. I found a career trade. I found a route to go down, and I was able to do all that with really not much restraint. So if you think things are going to get worse for you, if you're in a bad position now, think again. A lot of that is up to us. It truly is. One thing that I took from that was that he had been living for something outside of himself. He had been living for his father. I don't think that's really that bad of a thing. I think living for something outside of yourself is one of the most selfless and important things that you can do as a human being. If all we do is live for ourselves, all we care about is our own success. But when you find your purpose and when you find something outside yourself to live for, a lot of things around you become more noble. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. Donald J. Trump has my vote. America has my vote. And I hope you think the same thing when you go into the polls. I hope you think of Kamala Harris telling the people who are shouting for Jesus that they're at the wrong rally when you're at the poll to vote. I hope you remember J.D. Vance proclaiming that Jesus is king when somebody proclaimed that to him at a rally just last week. Lift the people up who lift God up, not put them down, not take them out of the school. God is a very important part of my life, and I think he's a very integral part to everybody's life, even if you don't realize it yet. We are all made in the image of God. We can all be flawed, certainly, but we can all move in the right direction too, with a little bit of help from a moral compass. And I think right now and over the last 4 years, our moral compass has been haywire. And I think one of the best ways to get that back is to, go back in time a little bit. I'm not too worried about what the news says, especially about somebody who was building a country that allowed me to rebuild myself. I think it's more important to look at that, and I think it's more important to look at that and think, hey, what can we do if we turn back the clock a little bit? Because I think that's really what we need to do. We need to go back in time 4 years and change and change the way that we looked at things. We're lost right now. I'll be the first person to say that. We are absolutely lost. And if we continue on the path that we're on, we're going nowhere. And that's really how I feel. And it's hard to say, and it's hard to say that and not worry about getting judged. But I don't really care. I don't really care what anybody has to say about me or what anybody thinks about me. I think what I think about that is the most important thing. And let's just keep moving forward, and let's do it together. Let's stop breaking each other apart. Let's stop breaking each other down for the way that we feel about certain things. Let's see what type of agreements we can come to through debate. Let's not just hate each other because of our opinions. Let's not hate each other at all. Nobody deserves hate unless if they hurt another person. If you're hating somebody because of their opinion, you need to look inwardly. But let's move on here.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Thanks, Dak. We're now getting back into Ballin' with Bump, and this is how I'm going to do it now. I'm going to put the topics first because I think this is what a lot more people care about, is what I have to talk about as far as what I pull from Twitter. But I am going to continue to talk about football because I love it. This is my selfishness. This is what I'm doing for me. So, I found this thread, and this might be one of the craziest coincidences in sports history. And I'm looking at the schedule here, and I'm hoping that this day doesn't fall on a Washington Commanders game. I hope they're not playing Monday Night Football on November the 18th. Let me just look at the schedule really quick here. I know that the Commanders play the Giants this week. But if we go 2 weeks in the future here to week 11, okay, good. They're playing Thursday Night Football, so this isn't a possibility. Unless if it's like 33 years later. So, on November 18th, 1985, Joe Theismann suffered a broken right tibia and fibula at the hands of three-time Defensive Player of the Year, Lawrence Taylor. He was playing for the Washington Commanders in Washington, D.C. He was on the 39-yard line, and the final score of that game was 23-21. The left tackle, Joe Jacoby, was a Pro Bowler who was off the field due to injury. Alex Smith, on the same day 33 years later, playing for the same team on the same yard line, suffered the same exact injury. The final score was the same, 23-21, in a game against the Houston Texans. It was caused by three-time Defensive Player of the Year J.J. Watt. In his left tackle, protecting the blind side, Trent Williams, who was off the field due to injury. Now, is that like a massive curse, or is that just a major coincidence? Because coincidences are crazy, first of all. I don't know if they are really coincidences or if they're acts of God. I believe most coincidences are an act of God. He's trying to open your eyes and show you something, but that right there, that is spooky. And I'm glad that I found that thread and included in this episode on November 1st, the day after Halloween, because that is absolutely, without a doubt, spooky as hell. And we'll get into week 8 here, and this is rounding up the halfway mark of the season. Minnesota and LA started a shootout on Thursday night last week on Amazon Prime. Matt Stafford is a sick puppy, okay? One of the plays that stuck out to me was Matt Stafford ducking underneath defensive pass rushers and finding Cooper Kupp for his second touchdown throw of the game. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both came back in the same game. Puka Nacua I think he caught 8 passes for over 100 yards. And when he was running, he was running the way that he said he wanted to. Like, he said the most exciting thing about him getting back on the field last week was the ability to just run right into somebody's face. And that is the attitude on a oos that I want to see. Sam Darnold was having trouble against the Rams. Jared Verse, the rookie, he's kind of been a standout for the Rams defense, who is suffering now that they're playing without Aaron Donald. So the first half was a bit of a shootout. They went back and forth for 2 touchdowns each team. It was 14-14 very quickly. But in the second half, Demarcus Robinson put on a show with 2 touchdowns to help the Rams get an 8-point lead. LASIK won this game, okay? LASIK, in their marketing campaign, was able to really capitalize on this one, because the one of the last plays of the game was Sam Darnold was in the end zone, and he ended up taking a sack for a safety, but he had his face mask yanked almost off of his helmet. That didn't matter to the refs, though, and it gave the Rams a 10-point lead, and that's how they ended up ending this game. They won against the Vikings in a huge upset where 88% of the money was on the Vikings, and the Rams won 30-20. And then we move into Sunday, which was National Tight End Day. Another fake holiday, but we'll celebrate it here because we celebrate all things football. This was a historical National Tight End Day. We had 16 touchdowns scored by tight ends, which is a record as of now. A record National Tight End holiday. It started right out of the gates with Kyle Pitts. He got loose for a 36-yard touchdown. And a few minutes later, Cade Otton, tight end for the opposite team, the Buccaneers, he would start the NFC South shootout with another touchdown there. Both tight ends end up scoring 2 touchdowns in the game, but Young Ho kept it cool. And the field goals plus the defense of Jesse Bates becoming the first Atlanta Falcon to force a fumble, recover a fumble, and pick off Baker Mayfield all in the same game. That would be the enabling factor to allow the Falcons to soar over the Bucs 31-26 to take control of the division. They are now in the lead of the NFC South since, I believe, Matt Ryan led them to the Super Bowl. We talked about a safety at the end of the Vikings and Rams game. At one point in the Chargers and Saints game, the score was 5-9, and I thought I was watching the World Series. Either way, Ladd McConkey explodes like he used to for the Georgia Bulldogs with a 60-yard touchdown, and he scored a 9-yard touchdown later on in that game. They got out of the scoring drought that they felt last week. They only the only way they scored in their game against the Cardinals was they had 5 field goals and finished with 15 points. J.K. Dobbins continues to inspire on his comeback season with a touchdown of his own, and the Saints have now lost 6 in a row. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles will continue an offensive onslaught they've lacked earlier in the season. Hurts runs in 3 touchdowns, and Saquon covers over 100 yards yet again, as the Eagles beat the piss out of the Bengals 37-17. However, what we're looking for this week in the Eagles matchup is for them to score in the first quarter, because they still have yet to do that this year. This week they have a favorable matchup as far as scoring goes. They're playing the Jaguars, who have allowed scores on almost every single opening drive this season. So let's see if they can get on the board nice and early. Speaking of the Jaguars, the Packers and the Jaguars played in what was a much closer game than anybody could anticipate. 2 more tight ends scored in that game. Tucker Kraft for the Packers and Evan Ingram for the Jaguars. It was a nail-biter, okay? It came down to the very, very end then. Both teams scoring 17 points in the second half to keep themselves nice and close. But it was the 10th point for the Packers that gave them the win. So Josh Jacobs ended up putting the Packers on his back because Jordan Love left that game due to a groin injury. He may be playing this week, but that could be a little bit of gamesmanship. If I was Matt LaFleur, I would trot out Malik Willis because he has yet to lose with Malik Willis as a starting quarterback, and then they have a bye next week. So it would be a good idea to give Jordan Love a couple of weeks off. Either way, Josh Jacobs was able to run the ball down and run the clock down to set Brandon McManus up for a second game-winning field goal in as many games as he's played for the Packers, and the Packers win 30-27. We'll stay in the NFC North, and we'll talk about who the Packers are playing this week. These damn Detroit Lions. Never in my life would I think I'd be calling these guys a Super Bowl favorite, but I'll put them in there for the NFC right now. The 49ers aren't the 49ers of last year, and they just lost Brandon Ayuk, and they're going to be a different team moving forward, especially with the absence of Christian McCaffrey. That team is really feeling the loss of CMC, and they were a completely different team before he ended up getting traded over there a couple of years ago. So we're seeing how big of a factor Christian McCaffrey is when it comes to football playing. He is a Swiss Army knife. He is a utility of sorts. And what he's able to do on the football field, catching passes out of the backfield and running very ferociously, for a lack of better words, the 49ers are feeling it, and that's what makes the Lions my Super Bowl favorite to represent the NFC. However, it's not just everything going on outside of them in the NFC. It's also their offensive line play. They have a plethora of athletes out on the field that can make anything possible. So every week you think you see their final trick play and you wonder why they pulled that out of their sleeve so soon. It's because they have another one and another one and another one. The athletic ability of the people on the line for the Lions make so much trickery possible. Sam Laporta would add to the tight end total, and that's also due to the play action plays being so open, with David Montgomery starting the game with a 7-yard touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs hits a huge 70-yard home run touchdown. Mason Rudolph was able to pull 143 yards out of Calvin Ridley, seeing his best performance of the season so far. But when the Lions are scoring on every drive and consistently getting a running back to run for more than 100 yards a game, they are unbeatable, especially with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch really locking down on the secondary and pulling in as many turnovers as they do. They give the Lions short enough fields where Jared Goff won this game 52-14, and only threw for 89 yards. So the Lions are on a 5-game win streak, and they'll head into Lambeau this week and play the Packers. Kyler Murray went on to throw for 300 yards in the Arizona Cardinals game. And he had 2 100-yard receivers, one being Marvin Harrison Jr., who had his best game of the season, hands down, and tight end Trey McBride, who caught 9 passes for 108 yards. Not a touchdown, though. And they ended up pulling off a comeback in Tua's comeback game. I was talking about how much the Dolphins needed Tua, and it's true, because the week before, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had 2 receptions for, I think, 14 yards. This week, they combined for 10 receptions and 117 yards. And Devon Achane became the weapon that he's supposed to be when he goes on to rush for 97 yards and catch 3 or 4 balls out of the backfield for 50 yards. So Tua really does make that offense more complete, and he is a much better quarterback than people give him credit for. So let's give him credit and a round of applause right now. Another comeback that I believe deserves a round of applause is Jameis Winston. We talked about Jameis Winston coming in for Deshaun Watson in the Browns game last week, or the week before last. The last ball in with bump, we'll say. But Jameis Winston comes in and throws for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Browns were able to contain Derrick Henry to 70 yards, and they squeezed out a tough win against the Ravens in the AFC North Division, it doesn't bode well for the Ravens. Their record is tied with the Steelers, and the Steelers still haven't played a division game yet. They kind of packed those all in at the end of the schedule, so we'll see what they end up having when it comes playoff time, but the Steelers and the Ravens seem to be the teams to beat in that division, especially with the Bengals getting beaten by the Eagles. And, either way, Jameis Winston is the truth. Both tight ends scored in each game. For each team. David Njoku scored one and Mark Andrews scored one, so let's add those totals up. The Colts almost pulled off an upset against the Texans, except they mismanaged the end of both halves, resulting in the Texans rising to the occasion. Joe Mixon ran for 102 yards to match Jonathan Taylor, who ran for 108. But it just seems like Anthony Richardson is too green for the job. I don't know if he's thrown 200 yards in a game yet. He doesn't have a 200-yard game here, but he does have a 69-yard touchdown to Josh Downs. But it just wasn't enough to stop C.J. Stroud from spreading the ball to all of his talent for 284 yards. The Texans win 23-20. And the Colts kind of go with a change here. After Anthony Richardson tapped out during this game, reportedly, he came out and admitted that during the play, it was a huge third down play that he should have stayed on the field for, but he left because he was out of breath and he was tired and he needed to take a play off. And now this week, the Colts will go on and they'll start Joe Flacco, who is the reason why, if you ask me, the Browns made it into the playoffs last year. The Colts go into Minnesota for a Sunday night football game to play the Vikings, and Joe Flacco will be leading their team. And they're sitting here at 4-4, and it's going to be a big, show. What do the Colts have? Because it does seem like they have a roster that's loaded with talent, but they're just not able to get it done, and they need great quarterback play in order to do that. And when your quarterback comes off the field because he's tired, you don't really know how much that guy can lead a group of men. It's not about being tired. We all get tired, of course. It's about being a leader. And Anthony Richardson just did not have that there. We'll move on to the Jets and the Patriots. Tyler Conklin scores, adding to the tight end total. Unfortunately, this game kind of saw through my clairvoyance was peaking at an all-time high when I was worried about Drake May coming in and starting for the Patriots so early because on an 18-yard rush, he got creamed and got a concussion. He scored a touchdown in the game earlier before he was relieved by Jacoby Brissett. Ramondre Stevenson's 2 second-half touchdowns were what helped the Patriots overcome the Jets. Ramondre scored on a game-winning drive that took the life out of the Jets. Both of those dumpster fires in that game, 2-6, and the Jets were kind of left scratching their heads, wondering what the hell happened. And we'll get into that at the end of the segment, but we'll move on to the Bills game where Dawson Knox scored on National Tight End Day. But James Cook scored twice and went for 100 on the ground. Josh Allen almost threw for 300 yards, and we continue to see a standout rookie in Keon Coleman be his number one receiver, even with Amari Cooper coming in. Amari Cooper provides great support and great veteran insight, and I think that's going to be a great guy for Keon Coleman to be around to learn as much as he can. Amari Cooper's been in the league 12 years. He's a very solid receiver still to this day. He caught a touchdown last week while running the wrong route. But the Bills creamed the Seattle Seahawks 31-10, and they're still atop the AFC East with seemingly no competition. Travis Kelce is all about timing. The Kansas City Chiefs win 27-20 over the division rival Raiders. Travis Kelce scored a touchdown in that game, his first touchdown of the season. He saved it for National Tight End Day, seemingly. And Pat Mahomes in this game became the fastest player ever to reach 30,000 passing yards. Now, that game, the win, great. The Chiefs are still the only undefeated team right now at 8-0. However, you ask me, they're the AFC favorite to reach the Super Bowl. So right now I'm calling it on November 1st, the Super Bowl will be the Chiefs and the Lions. The Chiefs seemingly have not let up on the gas. They just poached Josh Uche from the Patriots for a 5th round or 6th round pick to help their pass rush, as if their defense needed any more help. Now let's have some fun here. The Panthers put Bryce Young back on the field now that Andy Dalton is out with an injury. And despite throwing 2 picks, he kind of played relatively well, throwing 2 touchdowns to 2 rookie wide receivers, Jalen Coker and Xavier Leggett, who is he's got a tremendous voice and diction. He is from the South, and he talk a little bit like this. And whenever they interview him, it's kind of hard to just not really be entranced by the way that he be speaking. They ask him all kinds of crazy questions about a whole bunch of things. He said this week he don't really like seafood, and I can listen to the guy talk all day. Happy to see Bryce Young get a little bit of run here and kind of catch his stride and not play like complete crap, but it wasn't enough to take down Bo Nix and the Broncos. Bo Nix actually had his best game of the season, throwing for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he had to because the Panthers' run defense is pretty much their only saving grace on the field. Despite that, the Broncos won 28-14 and are the only team competing with the Chiefs in the AFC West, as they're 5-3, while the Chiefs remain undefeated. Before we get into Sunday Night Football, we had a very exciting end to the game. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders comes in after leaving last week's game due to a rib injury, and he scores a walk-off touchdown from 52 yards out in what was actually a ball that soared 64 yards in the air. In a game that was a little bit of a stinker of the game. It was very contentious between the Bears and the Commanders, an exciting game on the schedule. You see the number 2 pick, Caleb Williams, who only managed 4 completions through the first half, by the way, and the number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, only got 4 completions. The number 2 pick, Jaden Daniels, led his team to an 18-15 victory. But instead of giving Daniels the credit for throwing a bomb, despite dealing with that rib injury I talked about, which he was getting tended to throughout the entirety of the game, the focus was shifted to Tyreek Stevenson, number 29 for the Bears, who plays defensive back, who was supposed to be playing defense deep in the field. He was actually taunting the Commanders fans in the stands. Now, he says that he was talking to Bears fans out there, but it doesn't matter. The ball was snapped and his back was completely to the line of scrimmage, and he was actually the player that ended up batting it into Noah Brown's hands. Just another lesson that nothing's really over till it's over. You can't call it quits until the final whistle has been whistled, until the final bell has been rang, until the fat lady has sung. It's the difference between the Commanders being 5-3 or 6-2 like they are. They have control of the NFC East right now until they face the Eagles. So let's see what happens there. Sunday Night Football had the 49ers defense looking like the 49ers defense because Nick Bosa seemingly hates the Cowboys. He was smothering Dak Prescott, and it seemed like this was going to be the intense style of game the Niners needed to return to form after getting an early pick. After that, the Cowboys started to feed Zeke, and we got down into, I'm not a Cowboys fan, sorry, but the Cowboys got down in the field goal range where Brandon Aubrey ended up missing practice because of jury duty, but not the kick. Jordan Mason actually exits the game for the second time this season, but all that did was make way for Isaac Guerrero, and it just seems that anybody can run behind this San Francisco line. The 49ers would go on to rush for over 220 yards in that game, and a lot of that is due to the 49ers' offensive line play, but I would also say that a lot of it is due to the Cowboys just not being there defensively, especially not with a team like the 49ers. George Kittle and Brock Purdy all scored in the second half and gave the 49ers a 30-24 victory to rise to 4-4 in the wide open NFC West, where all teams are 4-4 except for the Rams, who are 3-4. The score doesn't really tell the story, though, in this game because Dallas was blown out pretty bad. They were down 30-10, and they got back into it relying heavily on CeeDee Lamb, who had 14 catches, which is phenomenal for a wide receiver, but it seemed like Dak was the only person to throw to him, and he continued to, and the 49ers, they capitalized on that because they picked him off, and he became the first Cowboys quarterback to throw multiple interceptions in 3 straight games since Troy Aikman. So maybe the Super Bowl hopes for the Cowboys are still alive. We moved to Monday Night Football. The Steelers The Steelers took on the Giants in what was like a promising game to be an absolute stinker. Both of these games have some offensive problems, but they both have a lot of defensive heat. Najee went for his third straight 100-yard game, and the Steelers win over the Giants. That was all defense and special teams. 2 fantastic touchdowns early in the game got called back, and they both ended up having to be kicks instead of touchdowns. They never got into the end zone in the first half. In the first half, they went in with a 9-9 tie. TJ Watt had 2 sacks in this game. He's got 6.5 on the season after what I think he got robbed last year of Defensive Player of the Year. Now, here's somebody who's coming for that throne, actually. For the Giants, Dexter Lawrence, playing nose tackle, has 10 sacks through 7 games this season. He had no sacks in this game, but he did have 4 tackles. Dexter Lawrence playing nose tackle, being in the middle of the line, and still getting to get sacks is a huge testament to how much intensity this guy plays with. So look to him to get some Player of the Year votes, and look to him to continue to be a wrecking force and a hope for the Giants. Other than Tyrone Tracy breaking free on a misdirect run play for 42 yards, it was the Calvin Austin show in the second half. Calvin Austin III, he would return a punt 72 yards for the Steelers and score a touchdown, and he ended up scoring a receiving touchdown as well, and that helped the Steelers seal the win, and it sealed the first half of the NFL season as we go into Week 9 here. Actually, after this week, we'll talk about the standings because it'll be the halfway point. Last night we had Thursday Night Football between the Jets and the Texans, and the Jets needed a win big time here. The Jets, to me, are a really fun team to watch. They kind of remind me of watching somebody play Russian roulette, except pointing at their head, they're kind of pointing at their foot. So they continue to hobble through games. They start out on defense, and Quinnen Williams goes offsides very early, but then they force a punt anyway. Their offense, they had 2 dropbacks, 1 overthrow and 1 drop, and then they were sacked on 3rd down and forced a punt. And Tommy Townsend just really, Thomas Morstead. Tommy Townsend was the punter for the Texans, but Thomas Morstead, he was pinning balls deep all game. C.J. Stroud's here playing without Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, and it really stands out and shows because nobody's really able to get open and break off a huge play for the Texans. So the Jets end up forcing another 4 and out, and then they force that 4 and out, right? And then they kind of pull a rabbit out of their hat and shoot themselves in the foot again because they run right into Tommy Townsend's leg, draw a roughing the kicker, and give the Texans a free first down, right? And so Joe Mixon starts to get the rock because every time C.J. Stroud got dropped back, he was kind of attacked and hounded, and he gets the Texans into the red zone. Quinnen Williams repents for his sins and strips the ball from Stroud. They end up getting that fumble. They recover a fumble. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae didn't really connect early in the game, which also led to another punt on a drive where Will Anderson ended up leaving the game, and that would be a huge factor in this game here. Thomas Morstead pins the Texans deep again, and Joe Mixon is Joe Mixon. I mean, this guy, no matter where he goes, he seems to just run the rock. He gets all the way down. DJ Reed goes out. Quinnen Williams gets another sack. There were 3 sacks 8 minutes into this game, by the way. They end up getting the ball back, and then the Jets start to feed Breece Hall. The Texans' pass coverage and also the Jets' kind of play selection it wasn't the way to dice this field up, right? So they were just throwing these short little passes and not using their speed on the outside to their advantage, and it just wasn't enough, right? Until Malachi Corley, the rookie receiver for the Jets, takes an end around and runs right into the end zone. Awesome. There's that sigh of relief I'm talking about when the gun doesn't go off in this game of Russian roulette, except he did shoot himself in the foot because he dropped the ball right before he crossed the plane because he was so excited and wanted to celebrate right away. That ball rolls into the end of the end zone, and that rule is that it's a touchback. The Texans get the ball on the 20-yard line and start a drive right there. However, Quinnen Williams is still getting the Stroud. All night we were hearing Quinnen Williams' names. It was another 4 and out, and on third down, Aaron Rodgers avoided a sack and threw a completion that turns into a touchdown for the Texans. Shot in the foot, and then a sigh of relief. The touchdown was overturned. It was an incomplete pass. Thomas Moreleg, we'll call him instead of Morstead, pins the Texans deep around the 6-yard line. Except it didn't matter because C.J. Stroud knew that he was getting hounded and started to move around. Joe Mixon found the end zone on a nice touchdown run. But then Devontae Williams and Garrett Wilson started to get the chemistry. Right at the end of the half, C.J. Stroud went down. When he went down, he also took out his right tackle. He landed on his arm. That man ended up in the hospital getting x-rays. And C.J. Stroud was off the field at the end of the half. In the second half, right away, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams are making plays. Garrett Wilson had 9 catches for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. He made a phenomenal one-hand grab where he got 1 foot and 1 shin down for a touchdown. And they just learned from their first half woes. They took advantage of the Texans' poor pass protection, and Devontae gets his first Jets touchdown, and they end up winning 21-13. 21-13, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. The Texans are kind of similar to the Patriots right now, where they can run the ball really, really well, but they just can't pass protect. They can't keep C.J. Stroud upright, which you're going to have to do, especially with a quarterback as talented as he is. He can make all of the throws, but not if he's on his back. Once you fall down, you can't throw the ball anymore. I think that goes without saying. But I think the Texans' focus moving forward is to get some quicker passes out of their quarterback. Allow him to use the weapons that they have, because even though Stephon Diggs is out for the rest of the season, Nico Collins will be back, and they still have Tank Dell, who is an absolute dog. They still have Dalton Schultz, who is a dog. They have Joe Mixon out of the backfield this year, which is much better than what they were equipped with last year. So I wouldn't count the Texans out necessarily, but we can't really rely on them to throw deep balls. And as the Jets go, here they are 3-6 now. They're 3-6. They've got a long road to go to get back to the top of the AFC East, and they probably won't surpass the Bills. However, they still have a chance to get into the playoffs. And if they play with the cohesion as they did in the second half, when they ended up putting up 21 points, I think they could have a chance. They could have a chance here to be one of those miracle teams. And a lot of teams that Aaron Rodgers is on, where they start out slow, they end out hot. So that's an exciting team to watch moving forward. The Patriots play the Titans this weekend, and Patriots are 3.5-point dogs. I don't know really what the Titans are expecting. They're trotting out Mason Rudolph, who, he threw the ball well last week, but they didn't really get a lot going on offense. So I'm kind of looking forward to this Patriots game and seeing what that's all going to pan out to be. I got a busy day ahead of me Sunday. I'm very excited to do what I've been planning on doing. But listen, I won't talk about it. I'll just show you once I get there. And then it's off to church and football Sunday, all Sunday. That's what I'm looking forward to right now. And as soon as that football kicks off and I kick my feet up, I don't know how much I'll be thinking about football, but I'll be thinking about my feet and making a move. It's race week, baby. So I'm locking in here. It's about time for me to hit the gym and hit the weights. Continue to train. That's the main focus right now. Continue my training and staying on top of my goals. And continue pushing out the podcast. A little bit different flavor than what we're used to, but it's all important things, especially the football part. As always, it's all love, man. Thank you for listening. As always, like, subscribe on all your platforms. Please leave a rating or a comment if you're on a platform that allows for it. And yeah, it's all love. Thanks for tuning into Bookmarks with Bump. God bless.
Money to the ceiling. I started at the I'm a night rider. Every time that I go out best midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I give what I got, I supply that fire. I supply that fire, man. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher now. I'm a night rider. Every time that I go up past midnight, I swear I get higher. Swear I gotta get higher, man.